Days of violence and growing escalation in Jerusalem. Israeli government officials consider minimum sentences, fines for rock throwers, and changes to the orders on opening fire on rioters. Vladimir Putin continues his push into Syria over the objections of Washington. This comes as Assad, in a rare interview, continues to criticize the U.S. strategy against the Islamic State. And amid the growing uncertainty, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu will travel to Moscow next week. And the U.S. second Republican presidential debate hosted by CNN will take place in Simi Valley, California, with the spotlight still on surprising frontrunner Donald Trump.
The News Today with Lucy Aharish.
Good evening and welcome to the News Today. Jerusalem was calmer today after 4 days of clashes between Israeli security forces and Palestinian youth on the Temple Mount Haram al-Sharif compound. But if the tensions are down, the sense of friction remains and violence could be reignited at any moment. I-24 News correspondent Shai Ben-Ari is in Jerusalem. Good evening, Shai. So what are the latest updates from Jerusalem?
Right, Lucy, good evening. We are here in East Jerusalem in the Ras Al Amud neighborhood on a day that was actually, it has to be said, relatively quiet, at least when compared to the previous days, the past few days that were indeed very violent. This day was actually proclaimed as a day of rage, but again, it was relatively quiet today, which just goes to show you that rage is not something that can exactly be planned ahead or scheduled, let's say. It's more of a spontaneous sort of thing. But today there were no major incidents on the Temple Mount. The fear is that it perhaps could pick up in the evening time now, more or less. We're talking about not necessarily on the Temple Mount itself during the evening, but rather the East Jerusalem neighborhoods, the neighborhoods surrounding the old city. Ras Al Amud, where we are, is one of them, and it remains to be seen how this night will play out. More on the past 24 hours in the following report.
A welcome respite from violence finally came Wednesday morning, but the atmosphere in Jerusalem these days is far from pleasant. Even if tensions have decreased a little, one can still feel the friction in the air.
Our main emphasis at the moment is to prevent those types of incidents from taking place, both in and around the different Arab neighborhoods, Issawiyah, Silwan, Wadi Joz, Ras Al Amud, and the other areas, in order to decrease the tension around the Temple Mount area.
A great number of checkpoints, like this one, have been set up near the various entrances to the Temple Mount, known to Muslims as the Haram al-Sharif, or Noble Sanctuary. Border police patrols have also been increased in the narrow streets and alleys surrounding the compound. There is little true discourse between the sides here these days, with the Israeli government determined to ensure Jewish access to the Temple Mount, while young Palestinians claim their willingness to continue what they call the battle for Al-Aqsa.
The Al-Aqsa Mosque belongs to the Muslims. We are here to protect it and to make sure the settlers don't enter it. I repeat, it's ours and not theirs. We won't wait and do nothing.
On Wednesday, Jews were able to visit the Temple Mount compound without major incidents occurring. Their number included right-wing activist Yehuda Glick, who noted the situation was relatively calm. But clashes were still taking place Tuesday night between Palestinians and Israeli security forces in various East Jerusalem neighborhoods. And indeed, the violence of the last few days has once again renewed talk of a third intifada. The dramatic increase in rock-throwing incidents in Jerusalem and its surroundings led the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to make some bold statements Wednesday.
We are in favor of strictly maintaining the status quo on Temple Mount. The status quo is constantly upset by agitators and rioters who barricade themselves on Temple Mount and harass worshippers, or more precisely, the Jewish visitors. This is also unacceptable to us. We are dealing with this in cooperation and dialogue with Jordan, and not only with them. We are changing policy. The present situation is unacceptable, and we intend to provide soldiers and police officers with the tools necessary to act very firmly against those who throw stones and firebombs. The stone does not distinguish between a car hit here, in which an Israeli citizen was killed, and a rock thrown within the Green Line.
Rumors of Netanyahu's potential visit to Jerusalem's Old City are said to have been the origins of this demonstration of Palestinian women in the Temple Mount compound. The organization known as Al-Murabitun, whose members verbally harass Jews visiting the site, has been declared illegal by Israel. Still, it continues its activities in the vicinity of the Al-Aqsa Mosque.
While this day has seen a decrease in violence so far, in Jerusalem, these kinds of situations tend to heat up as evening falls. A tense period lies ahead. Shai Ben-Ari, I-24 News, the Old City of Jerusalem.
Yes, and right now with me here in the studio is Avi Sachal, Middle East analyst. Good evening. Thank you very much for joining me.
Good evening, Lucy.
You know, Avi, it seems that the new status quo of Jerusalem is this volatile situation. This is the new situation that the Palestinian Authority is trying to maintain and the Israeli government is trying to maintain, to keep it volatile.
Well, it seems like some elements inside the Israeli government is even looking for some kind of a provocation or escalation. I know that the Israeli public tendency was to blame the Palestinians. I know the Palestinians blame the Israelis, of course, but both sides are to blame here. I mean, it's not black and white. It's, yes, different shades of gray here, because we see the escalation coming for the last couple of weeks with the changes of the status quo, the current status quo in the Temple Mountain, with the changes in the regulations of Muslims going to pray inside the Temple Mount because of provocations from Muslim women against non-Muslim visitors inside the Temple Mountain. And at the end, we had the spark last Sunday with the visit of Uri Ariel, Minister Uri Ariel, of course, and that started the big fight of the last 3 days. Today it was much calmer, but I must say that the general feeling is that it is about to explode again and again and again.
Let's talk about this general feeling, because it seems that we are talking about a general feeling that we started experiencing since the kidnapping of the 3 boys last summer, then the war, then of course the burning of Mohammed Abu Khdeir, and then it became even, let's say, more volatile after the burning of the house in Duma and the killing of a mother, child, and his father.
Look, it's very interesting because Jerusalem is not representing the West Bank nor Gaza Strip. It's not typical for what is happening in the West Bank and Gaza. It's isolated, but over there we see the flames of this deterioration and the anger from the Palestinian public. But Jerusalem stays isolated. And even after the murder of Mohammed Abu Khdeir, a few months after that, yes, we saw relatively calmness, meaning the anger went down. There was some kind of a feeling that, yes, we're about to ease the situation between the two sides. But then again, last few weeks are an example for the current situation in Jerusalem. Even if we witness some kind of withdrawal or calmness, relatively calmness, at the end it will go back and back and back again.
I want you to explain to me something else that is happening in the Gaza Strip, although you are saying that the Gaza Strip maybe is not connected to the West Bank, but everything eventually is connected to one another. Hundreds of Palestinians have been taking to the streets of the Gaza Strip in recent days, protest increasing power cuts. Residents of the Strip face an average of 12 hours of power cuts a day, and the only power plant in the Strip ceased operating in July as part of a dispute with the Palestinian Authority over fuel tax. According to local media, the protests currently taking place in the Strip are the largest in years. And I want to, just before you will explain to me what is happening there, I want to get the latest from Maha Mahani, an activist from the Gaza Strip. Good evening. And Gaza resident, good evening. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you.
So, Maha, what are the people of the Gaza Strip are actually protesting about? They're protesting only about the power cuts, or they're protesting about the general situation in the Gaza Strip? And maybe I will be even take it one step further. Maybe they're protesting against Hamas.
Yeah, I think the protests were not just mainly about the power crisis, but was like a symbol of the suffocation they are feeling for the unbearable situation they are living. It's not only about the power crisis. It's yes that the power crisis intensified in the last 2 weeks because the Egyptian lines went down, and we live with 2 to 3 hours of power every day. But mainly, we don't have the clean water, the economy is paralyzed, the infrastructure is destroyed, everything. Gaza is still, the houses that got destroyed last year in the war is still not rebuilt till this second. Nothing happened.
The images that we are seeing from the Gaza Strip are really incredible. Maybe these were the images that a lot of people around the world, maybe in Israel, maybe in the Palestinian Authority, were the images that people wanted to see, that the people in the Gaza Strip, that the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip are going out and actually starting to protest about the situation that they're living in. But do you think that it can deteriorate? Do you think that it's really some kind of a change that is happening in the Gaza Strip?
I think, yes, the situation here is explosive, you know, it's about to explode. People here can't stand the situation anymore. They are sick of this life, you know. There is no life in Gaza. People don't have jobs. Most families here are dependent on international aid. The borders are closed. The majority of people are youth here and they are not able to travel to study abroad. This is just a start. Maybe this is just used as a power crisis, but trust me, here now I think this is a start, and I believe it's a start for something bigger in the future. Even the Hamas military wing, the Al-Qassam Brigade, they banned pictures of Mahmoud Abbas and his government leader, Ram al-Hamdallah. They banned his photos, and this caused a dispute among protesters.
Yes.
So it wasn't only about the power crisis. It's just a start. Yes, the power crisis is unbearable in Gaza, but this is just a start. It's not just the power crisis.
Yes.
We are suffering from all kinds of life. We are lacking everything here in Gaza.
Yes, this is just a trigger. As always, Mahani, thank you very, very much for this. This is just a trigger, Avi. Are we about to see something big happening in the Gaza Strip? Are we actually about to see maybe the Palestinians going to the streets and saying, that's it, enough is enough with the government of Hamas, with the terror that Hamas is putting on our lives?
Look, if there's one thing that we learned from the Middle East in the last 4.5 years is never say never. Yes, things can happen. But my feeling, at least, is that we won't see here a kind of an uprising or an intifada against Hamas. Yes, we see the anger. We understand that the Palestinians in Gaza just had enough and they want to see normal life. But at the end of the day, there will be renewal of the electricity, and Israel will supply more gas into Gaza Strip, and they will have 8 hours of electricity instead of only 3. The question is, are they capable, I mean the people, are they capable of going out with thousands of them to the streets? And I think that the answer is no. I think that for the meanwhile, we do not really see a kind of a movement.
Why, Avi? Because Israel is right now inside a process with Hamas, and Hamas is right now conducting some kind of talks with Israel that it doesn't want that this will be heard.
Of course, look, Israel and Hamas are negotiating. Israel understands that it needs to ease the depression, the economic depression inside Gaza Strip, and this is why they discuss even building a gas pipe between Israel and Gaza in order to supply the power station in Gaza with gas instead of other elements. And bottom line is that then again, Israel is trying to maneuver, to try to find all kinds of small solutions into a much, much bigger problem. I don't think that the big problem will be solved in the next couple of months or even years. And then the question is, if Hamas will witness more and more anger in the streets, are they about to work with the anger, or maybe they will start shooting against Israel?
This is a big question. I believe that we will see and we will hear and we will feel it. Avi Sahal, thank you very, very much for this.
Thank you.
Russia is increasing its presence in Syria. For President Assad, this may be a lifeline, but for the West, it may be a provocation. Charles Bilzer has the details.
A Russian bear on the prowl in the Middle East. Moscow is reportedly shipping heavy offensive weaponry to Syria and building a forward operating airbase near Latakia, a stronghold of embattled President Bashar al-Assad.
We have supported the Syrian government as it confronts terrorist aggression. We have provided and will provide all the necessary military and technical support.
Moscow contends its actions are aimed at combating terrorism and has called for enhanced cooperation with the US-led anti-Islamic State coalition. But this poses a number of problems for the White House. President Barack Obama initially described Putin's military expansionism in Syria as doomed to fail, and in the wake of the Ukraine crisis does not want to be viewed as rewarding Russian aggression. Nevertheless, the U.S. is hinting that some level of coordination is, in fact, possible.
We would prefer to see from the Russians is a more constructive engagement with the 60-member coalition that's led by the United States, that's focused on degrading and ultimately destroying ISIL. We would welcome Russia's participation in that effort.
But a major sticking point remains the fate of Assad. With Moscow apparently increasing its support for him, any U.S. cooperation with Russia might be construed as a tacit legitimization of the Syrian regime. This reality is not lost on Assad, who in a rare interview criticized the U.S.'s unwillingness to engage him.
There's not a single coordination or contact between the Syrian government and the United States government, or between the Syrian army and the American or the U.S. Army. And this is because they cannot accept the reality that we are the only power that's fighting ISIS on the ground. For them, maybe if they cooperate with the Syrian army, this is like a recognition of our effectiveness in fighting ISIS. This is part of the willful blindness of the American administration.
With the stakes rising, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will travel to Moscow next week for talks with Putin. Israel has in the past been implicated in strikes in Syria, having vowed to prevent the transfer of sophisticated arms to Hezbollah in neighboring Lebanon. But a growing Russian military presence poses a grave obstacle to any such future operations. In fact, the probability of an international incident, albeit an unintentional one, is rising, as Western and Arab countries continue to drop bombs from Syria's skies. They will increasingly have to avoid Russian and Iranian military personnel fighting on the ground.
Yes, and with me right now in the studio and on Skype, Amir Oren, defense and government analyst for Haaretz Daily newspaper. Good evening. Good evening. And with a Skype phone call, Orlando is Tom Harb, chairman of American Middle East Coalition for Democracy. Good evening. Thank you very much for joining me, Tom.
Good evening.
So, Tom, you know, hearing President Assad saying that the United States is not taking a very clever measures, is not actually able, I'm sorry that I'm laughing, but it's really, if it wasn't so sad, it was funny, that he is putting or pointing the finger towards the United States as the one to blame for the situation maybe in the Middle East. Maybe it's true, but we are talking about Assad. We are talking about a person who is basically committing massacre each and every day with his own people. So what is standing behind this, let's say, accusations that Assad is pointing towards the United States?
Well, President Assad is not a president to be trusted because he's killing his own people. However, when you look at United States administration and President Obama, who has been leading from behind for the last 6 years, so there is no trust in the American policy toward the Middle East for the last 6 years. And also it started in Ukraine. The Russians saw how they could maneuver the American administration, and then with the Iranian deal. And then we move on to the Syrian situation. So the Russians played it very well and they succeeded. The Iranians played it very strongly and they succeeded. So the
there is no doubt with what you're saying about the Americans not playing the game right in the Middle East, not reading the map in a correct way. There is no doubt with these things that these are facts. But on the other hand, Syria is trusting right now Russia. Can they actually trust Russia with this situation after saying, okay, if the United States wasn't able to actually solve this, Russia, let's say, read the map or read the situation much better. Can they actually trust them?
The regime in Syria is trusting the Russians. the people in Syria, they backed with the Western nations, with the United States and with the West, and they did not do anything for them for the last 4 or 5 years. They have been slaughtered everywhere, and all what we see more gain by the radicals such as Nusra and ISIS. So the moderate people on the ground who are suffering the most, they don't know where to go any longer. They are still probably hoping for the first time now that they might depend on the Russian, and the regime in Syria also dependent on the Russian. So it's a catch-22. Who's Russia is going to give its loyalty to the regime or to the people of Syria?
Yeah, probably to itself. Tom Harb, thank you very, very much for this. Probably to itself. Russia is only taking care of itself. It's not actually taking care of the Syrians. It's not taking care of anybody else in the Middle East. It has a purpose. What is the purpose?
Well, this is the game of nations, isn't it? Now, you saw the clip, the interview with Assad, a very shy and introverted dictator.
Yes.
One may say a bashful butcher. Vladimir Putin, on the other hand, is a very brazen dictator. And he knows
more
outspoken, and he has his people behind him, whether they want it or not. Obama has the problem of a domestic audience, which is quite cautious, doesn't want to get involved in a land war in the Middle East. So what card could he play?
So,
however,
yes.
Russia has traditionally been supportive of Syria. Syria is close to its southern border. It has always been the strategic backstop to Syria. And when Gorbachev tried to get rid of the commitments that the Soviet Union had, one of the first to be informed about it was Hafez Assad, Bashar's
So we know we heard that Benjamin Netanyahu was planning a trip and planning to talk to Vladimir Putin on Monday and to tell him that supporting Syria puts Israel in a grave danger. But on the same level, Israel knows exactly that if Bashar al-Assad won't be in power, it will leave a vacuum that maybe will lead the whole region to an entire different situation and to a big anarchy.
You hit it right on the button, Lucy. There is quite a lot of hypocrisy here. The Russians are serving American interests and Israeli interests too in not letting Assad fall and the Islamic State win, and secondly, not having this support being credited to Iran. Does Israel really want Iran to get the credit for saving Assad? Better for Israel and for the West that Russia, and Russia, you remember, was a party to the chemical arms agreement only 2 years ago. Russia goes along with the United States on the Iran deal. It's not such a bad move for Israel or the West. So yes, Israel and the United States will say that it's not the right move and so on, but actually they like it.
So basically it's a headline.
Right.
Good one. Amir Oren, thank you very much.
Thank you, Lucy.
I don't think that you agree with me that it's a good one, but okay. Thank you very much. Members of Yemeni President Abd Rabbu Mansour Hadi's regime returned to Aden today after a 4-month exile in Saudi Arabia. They hope their return to the strategic city is just the start of their attempts to reestablish their grip on their homeland, as Eli Ochenberg explains.
For the second time since the Yemeni government loyalists recaptured Aden from Houthi rebels in mid-July, members of President Abd Rabbu Mansour Hadi's regime returned to the strategic port city. Yemeni Prime Minister Khalid Baha and a team of ministers arrived in the city Wednesday morning after being in exile in Saudi Arabia for months. The current goal of the administration: re-establish its grip on home soil.
God willing, President Abd Rabbu Mansour Hadi will come back to the presidential palace and we will liberate all parts of Yemen. We will not accept Houthi presence in our country anymore.
Meanwhile, the fierce fighting continues, mainly in the Marib province and the country's third-largest city of Taiz. Earlier this week, Hadi loyalists, backed by Riyadh, launched a major all-out offensive aimed at eventually retaking the capital city of Sana'a that was captured by the Houthi militias last September.
We are firing on them with machine guns and Houthis will not advance. They will not be able to take even one step forward. We are now advancing on them on all battle fronts.
The Saudi-led coalition intensified its airstrikes Tuesday, and at least 54 people were killed in aerial attacks across the country, including 4 children, according to the Houthi-run news agency. The coalition has stepped up airstrikes on Sana'a and other Houthi-held areas since a Houthi missile killed more than 60 Gulf Arab troops stationed in the Marib province earlier this month. This latest escalation comes as the exiled government backed out Sunday of a proposed new round of UN-brokered peace talks, insisting that rebels should withdraw from all captured territory.
And with me right now here in the studio is Ali Waqid, Senior Middle East Analyst. Good evening. Thank you very much for joining me. So, if the officials are returning to Aden, that means that maybe we can start saying that the situation in Yemen is starting to stabilize?
No, I don't think so. We're still far from stabilizing the situation in Yemen. I think that this is a gesture that aims to say that whenever Sana'a is released, it's not the Saudis only that were on the ground, but there is a legitimate government that will be leading the country, and it is not a foreign force that liberated Sana'a, the capital. By the way, Khalid Bahah is all the signs are showing that he is the next president, and the moment that the Houthis are accepting the government, the Hadi government, there will be a process to replace Hadi by Bahah, which is stronger than Hadi and is less accused by the Houthis and the opposition of being corrupted.
What happened behind the scenes? How come the officials decided to go back to Aden? Because it seems that something big was decided that made everybody come back to actually say we are here.
The big that is decided, Lucy, that in the coming days we are going to assist the campaign to full liberate Marib and then Taiz and then Sana'a, the capital. We are in front of a week. By the way, the Saudis are talking about the Al-Adha holiday that will be celebrated Thursday. The holiday was reported for one day. Everybody expected the holiday to be on Wednesday, and someone else said that the Saudis wanted one more day to prepare their campaign to free Sana'a. This is the big thing that is being prepared. By the way, we are not talking too much, but at the same time that the Saudis are preparing their campaign towards Sana'a and Marib, there is a huge confrontation, a huge war that is taking place at the Saudi side of the borders when the Houthis are occupying neighborhoods of villages at the border of South Saudi, which is very important to say that this war towards Sana'a won't be a simple trip to the Yemenite capital.
Yeah, and I thought that the holiday is determined by the moon, not by the war. Different times. Ali Waqid, thank you very much for this. We're going out for a small break, 2 minutes, and I'll be back after it. After days of violence and growing escalation in Jerusalem, Israeli government officials consider minimum sentences, fines for rock throwers, and changes to the orders on opening fire on rioters. Vladimir Putin continues his push into Syria over the objection of Washington. This comes as Assad, in a rare interview, continues to criticize the United States' strategy against the Islamic State. And amid the growing uncertainty, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu will travel to Moscow next week. And the U.S. second Republican presidential debate hosted by CNN will take place in Simi Valley, California, with the spotlight still on surprising front runner Donald Trump. Welcome back to the news today. Hungarian police fired tear gas and water cannons at migrants who were protesting the country's decision to close the border with Serbia as more and more refugees decided to use Croatia as their way into Western Europe. I-24 News reporter Ur Shapira has more.
The route may be changing, but the destination remains the same. After Hungary closed its border with neighboring Serbia, a first group of migrants have crossed the Hungarian border with Croatia on the way to Western Europe. Croatian Prime Minister Zoran Milanovic said Wednesday the migrants will be allowed to pass through his country and continue their journey.
Our response is that we are ready. We are ready to receive and even direct those people. And it totally doesn't matter which faith or skin color they may be, to go where they obviously want to go with all their hearts and ambition, which is Germany or Scandinavia, those few countries.
Želje, srca, ambicije otići, to su Njemačka.
As dozens cross the border to Croatia, hundreds continue to protest on the Hungarian border. They staged a sit-in on a motorway on Tuesday and forced authorities to close the main road from Belgrade to Budapest.
We are staying here for a hungry strike. We'll not move off this point to arrive to Vienna.
In recent days, Hungary has finished building the first stage of the security fence with Serbia, and now Budapest has announced it will extend the barrier to include a much longer border with Romania. Romanian officials have criticized the decision.
Unfortunately, the behavior of the Hungarian authorities has nothing to do with the idea of Europe. Fences, dogs, cops and guns. This looks like Europe in the 1930s.
German Chancellor Angela Merkel said Wednesday she still wants an EU summit next week to discuss the growing crisis. Last Monday, EU interior ministers who met in Brussels failed to reach a consensus on a plan to share 120,000 asylum seekers across the European bloc. But as the migrants continue knocking on Europe's door, the continent may find itself dealing with a much bigger number.
Yes, and from Berlin right now on the phone is Polina Garaeva, I24 News contributor. Good evening. Thank you very much for joining me, Polina.
Thank you for having me.
So, Polina, try to explain to this naive anchor who is sitting right now here in the Jaffa Port, how come Germany decided that 1 week it's opening the gates wide open, telling all the refugees to just come in, and then 1 week after it's saying, no, 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 you cannot go in, and more than that, even telling the neighbors to close the borders in order to prevent the refugees from coming in. What is happening right now?
Well, calling this a closure of the borders is a bit strong because Germany made it clear that it still plans to accept refugees, and the fact that it's reinstating the border controls does not mean that it plans to change its policy, and it's a warm welcome that it extended so far. But it is seen as a signal more to the EU countries that are trying that are now aren't cooperative, at least so what they're seeing here in Germany. It's sending them a message that Germany is not willing to carry this burden alone. This is also a message to the federal states here in Germany, who are a bit unable to handle this large number, and also the speed in which these refugees are coming here. But I have to say that the tracks seem more symbolic because in the end, people are still coming here to Germany. After the weekend where 20,000 people entered Munich in just 2 days, people are still coming in a rate of about 1,000 people per day. So the borders of Germany aren't closed. And Merkel made it clear yesterday when she responded to the criticism of her initial decision to open the borders that she still sees it as the right move, and more so if she would be forced to apologize. This is not the country. Yes.
I'm trying to understand what is the criticism saying, because it's coming because what? Merkel didn't plan this ahead, didn't see the entire picture. Germany didn't, because we were talking a lot about the fact that there is no clear plan regarding the refugees, how to accept them, how to treat them, what is going to happen after they're going to pass the borders. There is no such plan. So maybe the criticism is about this?
This is part of Merkel's leadership style. This is what she's done in concerning with Greece, and this is what she's doing now. She takes her time reading the situation, reading public opinion, understanding where the wind blows, and then she sets a very decisive position, which is what she has done now. After a long time of being silent and kind of not attending to this crisis, some might say not attending at the time, now she is taking action. And the decision to open the borders was in much part intended to prevent a humanitarian crisis. So this is a really urgent decision.
Yeah.
That's what it seems, an urgent move. It's true that Germany was not prepared. There are insufficient reception centers. When the refugees came over the past weekend, Munich had a very hard time finding enough beds for everybody. People were forced to sleep on mattresses at the train station.
Yes.
But now Germany is coping. It's also developing plans to integrate them in the labor market.
Yeah.
It's in the works.
I'm sorry, I just because we are short of time, but thank you very much, Paulina, for this conversation with us. Thank you very much. And to understand really if anybody actually thought about this further, and further we mean by the economic perspectives. Alex Coman is here with me, value creation expert at the Academic College of Tel Aviv. Good evening.
Good evening.
If we're talking about lack of plan in the social perspective, in the economic perspective, somebody thought about it, or maybe this is going to actually help the economy in Europe?
It is, definitely. Well, Germany has the world's lowest birth rate. So it passed Japan, if you're familiar with the fact that Japan had a low birth rate. We're talking about 1.43 births per woman, which means that the population is shrinking. And population is aging, and you have many baby boomers like myself who in the next 15 years are going to retire, which means that half of the workforce in Germany is going to retire. If you looked at those refugees, they're very young, they have kids. So they are the young blood that could go and compensate for this loss of the German economy.
Yeah, but you know, when you are bringing a lot of people, you need to verify what their education is, what their capabilities are, if they are students, if they finished with degrees, if they can do and can actually be useful for the workforce.
You're thinking about something like Ellis Island that the U.S. applied, so they would check people in terms of their health, their sanity, things of the sort. Well, this is something that is totally unplanned, which is contrary to what we're used to thinking about Germany planning way ahead. Yeah. Not at all. It's completely spontaneous. But overall, I think most of the people who came here, if you notice, they seem to speak English. They seem to be young. They seem to be more motivated. I'm sure they're not the people who are expecting to get welfare, but they're looking for work. So I'm not sure that all of them are positive, and I would like them to be my parents. But certainly they could contribute to the German workforce, especially since Germany is very much into industry, making cars, making machines, and we saw that Germany did fabulously well when it integrated East Germany. And now I think it could do quite well, even though it would have some mess now.
Yeah, it seems that it's starting to be a mess.
Very messy.
All over Europe. Thank you very much, Alex Cohen, for this. Tonight, the U.S. has a chance to see is the second debate featuring Republican Party hopefuls for the party's nomination for the presidency. And as with the first debate, the focus is on Donald Trump, who at this early stage is still the party's front runner. How come? Charles Biblazer looks at what we can expect.
They're all chasing this man, Republican presidential frontrunner Donald Trump, who will take center stage again Wednesday night as the party holds its second debate of the campaign. Trump's meteoric rise was surprising enough. More shocking, though, has been his ability to maintain a wide lead in the polls, despite multiple gaffes that many thought would spell his demise.
We are a country that owes $19 trillion. We lose everywhere. We lose militarily. We can't beat ISIS. Give me a break. It will change. We will have so much winning if I get elected that you may get bored with winning.
But as the Trump Express rolls on, another candidate is gaining steam. Neurosurgeon Ben Carson has likewise ridden a wave of anti-establishment sentiment and is now second in the race.
Well, thank you, Megan. I wasn't sure I was going to get to talk again.
We have a lot for you, don't worry.
The stakes are high for Carson as the national spotlight focuses on him like never before. It is also crunch time for Jeb Bush, who has seen his fortunes turn dramatically. Once the clear-cut favorite, his nosedive in the polls has mirrored Trump's ascent. With some of his donors reportedly losing patience, Bush will have to perform well to regain some momentum. There will be one new participant in tonight's debate, Carly Fiorina, the only woman of the bunch, made it to the primetime stage by starring at a previous undercard event in Cleveland.
When the United States of America does not stand with our allies and confront our adversaries, the world is a very dangerous place. We must have the strongest military on the face of the planet, and everyone has to know it.
It marks Fiorina's first appearance with Trump since he suggested nobody would vote for her due to her looks. Will she come out fighting along with her peers? Many are expecting a more combative atmosphere as time ticks down to the Iowa caucuses, now just over 4 months away.
Political correctness. And to be honest with you, this country doesn't have time either.
Don't laugh, Charles. Don't laugh. You are probably going to stay up tonight to watch the best show in town.
The alarm is already set for 2:45 a.m. Israel time.
Israel time.
Absolutely.
What should we expect from this debate? Because it seems that you just said it just while we were watching this piece. Everybody's coming to watch Donald Trump.
All eyes are on Trump, and just to let you know, the first debate on Fox drew about 24 million viewers. They're expecting more than that. This is not quite Super Bowl-esque, but right up there in terms of interest. This being said, Trump does have a bit of a bullseye on his back, and what a lot of people are looking out for is whether or not other candidates are going to start attacking him in hopes of reining him in.
Jeb Bush?
Jeb Bush, for example, what we were talking about a little bit before is that it's almost ironic or paradoxical because while all eyes are on Trump, to a large degree, it's not about him tonight. He's established himself. He's polling regularly at about 30% at the national and the primary level. To a large degree, this could have a much greater impact on other candidates. So you mentioned Bush, for example. He's on the other end of the spectrum for Donald. A new CBS New York Times poll found that he's polling 6%. Okay, now at the national level. And remember, he was the front runner. A lot of his donors are apparently getting very frustrated with him. He's got to make a move. He has to perform well tonight.
He has to perform very good tonight, but somebody else is with us here. You missed her.
I did.
Yeah, definitely. And I missed her too. Shahal Peled, good evening. Good to see you back on our screens.
Hello, good evening. No alarm clocks for me. I'm going to watch it at 8 p.m. Eastern Time here.
But
and
probably
we're very much anticipating to see it.
Yeah, probably, Shahal, you are not going to watch Donald Trump. You are going to watch Fiorina. What is her reaction going to be to the entire scandal that just happened in the last months?
Yeah, so as we know, it's been a feisty battle between all the Republican candidates against Trump. Everyone is speaking loud and clear against the surprising or not frontrunner who continues to enjoy a steady lead in the polls. But apparently somehow his anti-political correctness is a great appeal to his voters. But today's main focus, I think, will be on the debate between Trump and Carly Fiorina, the only woman on the panel. She's already gotten her share from Trump. He criticized her looks, of course, saying, look at that face. Would anybody vote for that? He said her voice gives him headaches. He's been the regular Trump that we've been hearing. But 61-year-old Fiorina doesn't seem too intimidated. She says that she actually thinks she's gotten under the skin of Trump and that he will be hearing a lot from her.
Shahal, you've been spending the last months, I think, almost in New York City. What are people actually think about Donald Trump, about this fiasco that is happening in the Republican Party?
Well, the common New Yorker still feels like this is a joke, but as we look at the polls, it seems that as much as he doesn't apologize and his remarks become more sexist, he's actually doing better in the polls, which is something quite alarming. And this is a man that, like Carly Fiorina, has never held a public office, but he's gained, as we mentioned earlier, so much trust from his voters thus far. Though many in the poll, Charles and CBS New York Times showed that he is considered very low at the honest levels. He's still very much popular, and his voters are looking for another voice.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Shachar, but you know, it's on Skype, you have less time than in the studio. I'm sorry, but it's so great to see you. It's good to see your smile. We will talk very soon. Thank you very much, Shachar.
Good to see you.
Let's talk about Ben Carson.
Yes, the other guy really to look out for tonight who has a lot riding on the debate is Mr. Carson, the neurosurgeon who shares with Trump the kind of anti-establishment persona that a lot of voters seem to be gravitating towards. Every poll virtually shows Carson now second at the national level and at the primary level. But again, he does have somewhat of an image problem in terms of his energy levels. There's been a little bit of flip-flopping in terms of his religiosity. Tonight is a big night for him. He's got to come out and look presidential. Really, Charles, just from your perspective, before we're finishing, how long do you think this fiasco will continue? Because it is a fiasco. From everyone that I've spoken to, certainly into the new year. And I think you're going to see Trump seriously contend in Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina. He's ahead in Florida. He's ahead in California as well. You know, I think that we're going to see a Broadway show on this very soon. Amongst other things. Yeah. Charles Bubblister, thank you very much for this. Thank you for having me. Yeah. And from one Broadway show to a White House show, the White House has announced that President Barack Obama and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will meet in Washington on November 9. This will be the first meeting between the two men since the Iran nuclear deal was reached at the end of July. Believe me, this is a very good story for a Broadway show. I wonder what the title will be. The United Nations General Assembly session got underway in New York Tuesday and has as its priority a plan for substantial development. I-24 News correspondent Daniel Ziri looks at what's ahead.
A General Assembly focused on sustainable development. This will be indeed one of the priorities of the United Nations 70th General Assembly, which officially opened in New York this Tuesday. Leading this session, the Danish Mogens Lykketoft. He was appointed to the position in June 2015 and is an experienced politician who served as Minister of Finance, Speaker of Parliament, and even Foreign Affairs Minister in his country. The opening ceremony started with a moment of silent prayer, followed by the speech.
It is my great honor to open the 70th session of the General Assembly of the United Nations. A session which I hope will be truly historic. A session not just of groundbreaking decisions, but one of much-needed concerted action for people and for planet.
Concerted action, which will start with adopting the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. World leaders will gather from September 25th to September 27th for this very purpose. The agenda consists of 17 goals, among them ending poverty, promoting gender equality, as well as fighting climate change. Quite an ambitious project with an even more ambitious deadline, 15 years from today. But sustainable development is only the first of many issues this GA will have to tackle. The Syrian conflict in the Middle East and the refugee crisis in Europe will also be at the top of the agenda.
The major refugee crisis, which hits the headlines, especially in Europe, but is about the lack of ability of the United Nations until now to agree on how to stop the wars and conflicts that are the root causes of this humanitarian catastrophe.
Over the next 2 weeks, the 70th General Assembly will have a busy schedule. Pope Francis is expected to take the podium on September 15th. He will then be followed by some 200 world leaders who will speak at the general debate, which will be held between September 28th and October 3rd.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu as well as Iranian President Hassan Rouhani will take part in this event. The debate may very well be the largest ever gathering of world leaders.
Yes, that was Danielle Ziri from New York. And firefighters in California are rushing to protect some of the state's most famous forests as a wildfire continues raging across the Golden State. The drought, which has affected the state, has not made the firefighters' job any easier. We have more in the next ABC report.
Crews spent the evening setting backfires on Cobb Mountain. The cool temperatures combined with little to no wind made it possible for firefighters to conduct these controlled burns.
Getting all the ground fuels taken care of, basically is what it does.
Just down the way, investigators went to the property on High Valley Road where they believe the valley fire may have started. They paid close attention to the shed where flames burned fast up the hill behind it Saturday afternoon.
I've already changed twice today. I'm all scraped up from climbing through the creek.
John Wall was among the thousands who left his home Saturday, but tonight he bypassed police blockades and came back, despite evacuation orders. He lost 2 rental properties, a few outbuildings, and a couple of vehicles, but his century-old home remains intact.
You know what? It's not so bad. It's not so bad. I can try to see some of the good out of this, you know? It could be way worse. There's 4 of us. We're still healthy, you know?
But a different outcome for so many others who lost so much more. Firefighter Melanie Geiger flew in from Wyoming last night.
Oh, the damage is really sad. I've never really been on a fire where there's been so many structures lost, so driving through Middleton was really heartbreaking.
We're back to Israel, to the crisis in the Israeli education system. Tens of thousands of students at Christian schools in the country have been on strike for over 2 weeks in protest of massive cuts to their government funding. The crisis is evoking the open wounds of a racial injustice in Israel. Ayman Siksik has more.
It's week 3 into one of the most prolonged strikes in the Israeli education system. The Christian schools in Israel are on strike and 33,000 pupils have still not started their school year. Why are they striking? The reason is Israel's changing policies of education under new minister Naftali Bennett from the Jewish Home Party. The government used to fund 75% of Christian schools' budgets, with parents paying the rest in tuition. However, the amount the state pays was cut to 34% in 2013. In addition, the Ministry of Education is now limiting the tuition that can be required by the schools. Protests have been held since September 1st, the official start of the Israeli school year. The most recent one at the Israeli parliament, where Arab lawmakers showed up to stress the significance of these schools for the Arab population.
More than 80% of all Arab employees in the high-tech industry are graduates of Christian schools. These schools are crucial for the success of our society. 50% of all students are Muslim and 50% are Christians. These schools are a blessing for the Arab population in Israel.
But in an increasingly tense social environment in Israel, the fight for funding of Christian schools has also taken on a political meaning.
This is a scarlet letter of shame for the Israeli government, a sign of shame for Israeli democracy. We will not stop our fight. We will continue with the strike. We are not looking for handouts. We are looking for justice.
So what do they want? Christian school representatives are demanding that the Ministry of Education provide about 200 million shekels, or $50 million, in government funding. Now, as the strike marks its 16th day, the National Organization of Teachers in Israel may join the strike in order to highlight the pupils' plight, adding extraordinary pressure on the Minister of Education to find an immediate solution.
And with me right now here in the studio is our correspondent, Ayman Siksik. Good evening.
Good evening, Lucy.
You are a graduate of one of the Christian schools here in Israel, here in the Jaffa city. Let's explain to our viewers what is the Christian schools, because when you're saying Christian school, it gives us something else in mind.
That's right. People expect that if it's a Christian school, then it's Christian education and a Christian population that goes to the school. when really, just as we heard in the story, at least 50% of the students that go there are Muslim. When I was there at the school in Jaffa, there were a lot of Jewish students as well, and international students that come to Israel and want to study at a school where the education language is French. So really, it's a cultural being. It's a cultural coexistence that doesn't happen anywhere else in Israel.
You know, one of the claims is that basically the taxpayer, the Israeli citizen, is saying, why should I finance these schools when they are private schools? If a parent wants to send his child to a private school, let him pay it. I should not pay this from my tax money.
Well, I think the problem is that the Israeli government has not been unique or has not taken a specific line with all the schools when it comes to funding in this case.
And you are talking about the ultra-Orthodox schools.
That's right, who receive a lot of funding, as we know, and with Naftali Bennett as the new education minister, who has not yet commented publicly on the strike. And it's increasing frustration among these students, among the representatives of the schools, among everyone involved in the strike, that the Israeli government does not care about their strike or about their education. Now, aside from 33,000 pupils sitting at home, 3,000 teachers who teach at these schools are also at home. These are the teachers who are responsible for the extremely impressive numbers and success rates. If the education minister doesn't care about that, I don't know what he can care about.
Unbelievable. Ayman Siksik, thank you very, very much for this. And we're going out for a small break, an update from our news desk, and then we will be back for the third part of the news today. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to the news today. Britain's Labour Party has a new leader, Jeremy Corbyn, and even before he was elected, he sparked controversy, and it hasn't died down. The veteran backbench member of Parliament is known for his left-wing radical views and also for his support of people many in Britain and elsewhere consider enemies of the West. But who is really Jeremy Corbyn, and exactly what does he stand for? And more importantly, what exactly will he bring to British politics? With me now to discuss this is Daniel Sheck, former Israeli ambassador to France. Good evening.
Good evening, Lucy.
And also Brian Thomas, senior editor of the Israeli website, Israeli Cool. Good evening.
Hi, thank you.
So, who is he?
Well, he has such a long known history of being on the extreme left of British politics. I mean, basically coming out of a background of almost communist Britain, Stop the War coalition, every anti-war system you can imagine, very radical in his economic thinking, but also a great friend of basically enemies of the British state and of the state of Israel, I'd say.
Enemies of the world.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I don't look. This man has praised the IRA as freedom fighters, and then we get on to his pronouncements about Hamas and Hezbollah being his friends, and he's never ever been a friend of a Zionist. And what we've got going on in England, I think, it means that the public display of views that I consider to be Jew hatred, I don't really use the word anti-Semitism, that public display is now it's mainstream. It's made 260,000 people voted for him in the Labour primary.
What were the Labour Party thinking in Britain? Because, we've been criticizing a lot the, let's say, extreme right wing in the West. What were they thinking when their leader is actually saying that he's going to meet his friends and his brothers from Hezbollah and Hamas, and he's thinking and talking the way that he is?
Well, I think the issue of Hezbollah and Hamas, which is, of course, of special interest to Israelis and the Jewish community, is not the main focus of the 260,000 Brits who voted for him. On the other hand, of course, it didn't stop them from voting for him, but that wasn't the main reason. But what were they thinking? I must quote to you the unbeatable words of a very lengthy piece in the New Yorker about him, where they say, if you are someone who worked for Tony Blair when he was a party leader, you will now lie down in a dark room, press your fingers to your temples, and wonder if your life's work just got thrown out of the window. Oh. So that is basically what I think the traditional leadership of the Labour Party is going through right now. It is correct that Jeremy Corbyn has a very long history, but he has a history that was considered by most people as some kind of bizarre joke within the Labour Party. And it's suddenly, out of nowhere, within less than a year, he suddenly, swept the whole thing.
Let's see this bizarre joke. Today, Corbyn faced his first Prime Minister's question time as leader of the opposition and lived up to his promise of the new kind of politics.
Many told me that they thought Prime Minister's question time was too theatrical, that Parliament was out of touch and too theatrical, and they wanted things done differently, but above all, they wanted their voice heard in Parliament. So I thought my first Prime Minister's question time, I'd do it in a slightly different way, and I'm sure the Prime Minister is going to absolutely welcome this, as he welcomed this idea in 2005, but something seems to have happened to his memory during that period. And so I sent out an email to thousands of people and asked them what questions they would like to put to the Prime Minister. And I received 40,000 replies.
You know, bizarre, but it seems that bizarre is working all around the world right now. Let's look at the United States. Donald Trump is not bizarre.
I'll tell you, that what he just said there, that 40,000 people answered his emails, that is so important. And I know that his views on Israel are not really the main reason why he was elected, but they are no longer an impediment to his progress. We on our blog, Israeli Cool, we looked at his website for his constituency. He's been a constituency MP for 30 years or something, of Islington. So someone counted, we reported, they counted the number of times the word Islington appears on his website and the number of the times the word Israel and Palestine appears is more. He's more concerned about Israel. But the point is, that doesn't stop 40,000 people sending him questions or 260,000 voting.
The whole idea of participative democracy is gaining traction around the world. Look at Greece. Look at a lot of places where people suddenly, maybe because of mass information, of social networking, all that, they want to be they want to be part of this game that they keep seeing just on television.
Yeah, but Daniel, it is strange because let's say the situation or the phenomena that we're experiencing right now and we're seeing right now that is happening in the West is that everybody's going more to the right, to the extreme right, that the West, that Europe is going more to the right than to the left and even to the center. So what?
Lucy, you just explained the phenomenon. If many moderate right-wing voters are moving more to the radical right, then it makes sense in a way that there should be a counter measure on the left. And I think that if you're in a party that thought a few months ago that it was their moment, that it was time for a change of government, for a change of rule in the UK, and they were so bitterly disappointed because they lost, they suffered a resounding defeat in face of the Conservatives, then maybe that is the reaction, that they no longer believe that they can beat the Conservatives in the center, and that they have to go back to the radical core, uninhibited beliefs of the left.
You know, forgive me for what I'm about to say, but you know, British people are more, let's say, polite, are more conservative, are traditional, are, let's say, he is everything that I have in my head for a British stereotype, for example. How will the people in Britain accept him as a leader?
No. The point, he can't be, in my opinion, I don't think he can be elected by the general population. Now, actually, the Labour Party wasn't defeated by the Conservatives. They lost Scotland. And when they lost Scotland to the SNP, then it made it impossible for them to gain power in Britain as a whole. So, you know, the electoral politics are a little bit aside. But I keep coming back to this feeling that we've broken like a little dam here. I knew when I lived in England, and that's why I left and came and made Aliyah, I felt this undercurrent of anti-Semitism, mostly at the top strata of society. You know, it was this polite anti-Semitism. It was this, oh, those Jews, if it weren't for those damn Jews, you know, everything would be peaceful and quiet and we could be friends with the Arabs properly. And what happened was that was like a suppressed and repressed view. Most people didn't say it out loud, especially if I was in the room. But today they can.
It's amazing to hear this, that this is going to be the genuine, or maybe this is the growing genuine feeling.
He is some kind of caricature of the radical left-winger worldwide, not just in the UK. He supports all these things, from nationalizing the railroads, nationalizing major energy companies and other companies.
He supports coal mines, but then he supports green energy and not burning the coal.
Absolutely. And he supports Hugo Chavez, and he supports the Palestinians, and he supports Hezbollah, and he supports the Iranians because they're in. He
doesn't want Britain to have a nuclear weapon.
And everybody, and it's a mosaic, and everybody should express himself.
Britain shouldn't have a nuclear weapon, but Iran should.
Probably, you know, the continuation of the sentence that I quoted was, what were the Conservatives thinking? And they were, of course, uncorking champagne bottles, because they sort of feel that the next election is already won, which is not necessarily the case, but it's still a long way ahead.
Well, it seems that he is pro-everyone, but not pro-Israel. But it's okay, it's okay. In Israel, we're used to it. Gentlemen, thank you very, very much for this. The world's most popular social network may be getting an upgrade, something so small that's been on so many people's mind for years now and may finally become a done thing. Mirav Savir explains.
It's the button people keep asking for, an alternative to the iconic thumbs up like button on Facebook, and it may soon reach a screen near you.
Today is a special day because today is the day where I actually get to say that we're working on it.
For years, CEO Mark Zuckerberg saw the dislike button as something negative that he didn't necessarily want on his website.
You know, we don't want to turn Facebook into a forum where people are voting up or down on people's posts. You don't want to go through the process of sharing some moment that was important to you in your day and then have someone downvote it, right? I mean, that isn't what we're here to build in the world.
But Zuckerberg says over the years they learned people weren't going to click the dislike button to hurt each other's feelings. And while responding to a question from a Facebook user in Cairo, Egypt, he explained what he hopes it will be used for.
You know, not every moment is a good moment, right? And if you are sharing something that is sad, you know, whether it's something in current events like the refugee crisis that touches you, or if a family member passed away, then it may not feel comfortable to like that post, but your friends and people want to be able to express that they understand and that they relate to you.
According to the CEO, the dislike button will be tested soon, but he didn't specify what it would look like or when it will be available for the social network's 1.5 billion users.
And Jonathan Reagan is with me right now.
Don't dislike me.
I'm not disliking you. I don't want to dislike. I will never dislike you.
Tell Facebook not to dislike me either.
You know, this is a bummer. Like to have the dislike thing. It's like, it's just...
You never know if he dislikes you or dislikes what you wrote or...
Because all the social network thing is all about, you know, like.
Yes.
Like me, love me, be the...
Yes.
But I will never dislike.
Listen to what I ate because it's so interesting.
And we are not disliking the fact that Maccabi Tel Aviv might win Chelsea tonight.
Yes. First, it's been a long wait. 5 years we've been waiting for an Israeli team to finally be in the group stage of the Champions League. The wait will be over in about 20 minutes when Maccabi Tel Aviv plays against Chelsea at Stamford Bridge. At any normal time, I would say no chance whatsoever for Maccabi Tel Aviv. Chelsea is by far a better team. Having said that, Chelsea are going through a terrible beginning of the season. They lost 3 over their opening 5 matches in the Premier League. Does Maccabi Tel Aviv have a chance? I will not be surprised if they lose, and yet if they come back with a point, it may be a good surprise for their fans.
Do you really think that they're going to win?
Am I supposed to be a diplomat or say what I really think?
They say what you really think. We're not diplomats.
No, I don't think they have a chance. And if they do get a point, don't bring me in tomorrow to tell me you're wrong. Dislike.
You welcome tomorrow. You will be here tomorrow.
Yes.
But you don't have faith, Jonathan.
That is why I asked if you want me to be a diplomat. I did the
I'm sorry, it's just
dislike thing before.
I'm just like, I have the same faith in Maccabi Tel Aviv. I'm not going to say the Olympics 2024.
Yes, the games are 9 years away. The host city will be chosen only in 2 years' time in Lima, in Peru. But if you want to host the Olympics, that's it. The bidding is over. 5 cities are competing for the honor. It's going to be Budapest, Hamburg, Rome, Paris, or LA. LA, we spoke about. They presented a late bid. The race between LA and Paris is very interesting. If one of them is chosen, it will be the only city that will host the Olympics for a 3rd time. Both Paris and Los Angeles already had the event twice, and it's going to be very interesting to see if one of them gets it. Of course, both these cities have a lot of sporting infrastructure. Paris is seen now at this very, very early stage as slight favorites, but there's still a lot of time until the host city is chosen in September 2017.
There's some very interesting cities here in Israel if they want to host the Olympics.
Where exactly? Where? Jaffa Port? We can do some sailing, but that's it.
Did you hear about the city of Hadera?
Yes, I did.
So
what sporting infrastructure do they have there that I do not know about?
A lot.
Such as?
Spartan race.
Yes, it's our final item. Spartan race, it's a race in Austria where you run 20 kilometers. Sounds sane.
Yeah.
But along those 20 kilometers, you jump into mud pools, you carry logs, you carry chains, and which are, of course, very heavy. Chains and logs which you and I together cannot lift.
What is this, Games of Thrones kind of race?
Pretty much. The winner, and I hope I'm saying his name right, is Michal Riajnik from Slovakia. He finished this in a decent time of just about 2.5 hours, which normal people, that's what it takes them to run 19 kilometers.
This, just so you know, Jonathan, you will find in Hadera.
Yes, there are Spartans in Hadera, maybe. We'll go look for them.
Jonathan, thank you very much.
Thank you, Lucy.
And that's it for tonight. Tomorrow we will be here again at the same time, same place from the Jaffa Port, Israel. Not Hadera, Israel. Jaffa Port. Good night.